Anyway, Gran and I hanging out, not doing much to be honest, but she's got the radio on, the old ham radio, and an old Beatles song came on, and she said, I can't even remember what song it was to be honest, but she said, Tom, you know the Beatles, right? I said, Gran, they're not my favourite band in the world, but I know there were, five talented young English lads from Liverpool, George, Ringo, Dave, and John. I think they're good. I think they've got some good songs. I think the song that was on the radio was Here Comes the Sun, my personal favourite. Grant said to me, well, if you know so much about the Beatles, then have you seen that new film 1-to-1, John and Yoko? I said, Grant, 1-to-1 John and Yoko is an archive-fueled documentary detailing the months that John Lennon and Yoko Ono spent in a New York City apartment. It gives further insight into their relationship and their political activism. Yes, I've seen it. I think the biggest USP, if I can use a sales term, Graham, the biggest unique selling point of 1-to-1 John and Yoko is the concept. Let me talk you through it. So essentially, the whole film is archived, but it's all told through an old 70s television, if that makes sense. Now, this concept is built on the idea that John and Yoko spent almost all of their time in their Greenwich Village apartment watching television. John loved to watch TV. So we are watching the channels that John supposedly flicked through. So we might get a 30-second snippet of John and Yoko performing at a concert, and then static comes in, channel changes, and then we've got, them talking to Bob Dylan on the phone. And then channel changes again, and it's just something completely unrelated to John and Yoko, and it is a Tupperware commercial from the 1970s. The whole film is told like that. You either get on board with that or you don't. It took a while for this thing to, settle into its feet, to find its legs. I think that concept is interesting, but can make things feel a bit scatterbrained. There's no real narrative here, especially at the start. We are pinballing around quite a lot. For me, when the film started, I thought this concept might be fun to play with for a little bit as we're introduced to their apartment, which is all recreated and shot in 4K. So that looks brand new. They've recreated the apartment as they would have lived in it back then, and we're moving around it. The camera moves around it. And then we move into the TV. And I think, okay, we'll move into the TV for a bit. We'll do this channel changing thing. And then we might, put that concept to rest for a little while. But no, it's the whole 90 to 100 minutes that this film is. It's an okay concept. I don't think it's the most creative idea in the world. If you've ever listened to Channel Orange, Frank Ocean, you've seen this there. So I wasn't blown away by, ooh, this is so cool, and I think that we should tell the entire story through this device. I thought it grew a bit tired after a little while. The thing I really want to touch on is performances though, Gran. I thought John Lennon as John Lennon was fantastic. I think he knocked it out of the park. It was, at times it was like I was literally seeing John Lennon. Yoko Ono as Yoko Ono, I wasn't as convinced. It felt like she was doing a bit of an impression, and I was just very aware that I was watching a film when she was on screen. My enjoyment of the film may have been dictated by my knowledge of the Beatles and my interest in the subject matter to begin with. I know that John left the Beatles, I know that Yoko broke up the band, but I never knew anything about John and Yoko's life after the fact. And maybe this is the first piece that's really shown that properly. Because from my knowledge and my exposure to the Beatles, Yoko has always just been the butt of the joke. She's the gal who broke up the band, and she's not really her own. We don't know anything about her as an actual human. She is a person as well. Maybe this film will tell us a little bit more about her and give us an insight into what she was actually about, what John saw in her, what their relationship was like. And yeah, I think we get that. There's a story arc where we see that Yoko is looking for her lost son or daughter, I can't remember. I just honestly don't think that there's anything extraordinary there. I think if she wasn't dating John Lennon, she wouldn't be a name that anyone knows. John fell in love with her, and that's great, and he claims that she was a genius. Love can blind people, I guess. 1-to-1 is the final full-length concert that John ever did after leaving the Beatles, and he did it with Yoko. So they performed songs together, and there is a clip of Yoko on stage performing at this concert, and it's just bad, objectively. Like, it's bad. Like, you can't say that she's a good performer. You can't say she's like mental. She's crazy. And if she weren't, and I mean, art is art, who knows? Maybe it's great. Who am I to say? But you can say that for a lot of the Beatles stuff as well, that it's fucking, I am the walrus. Like, what, like, who knows? And maybe if John did exactly what Yoko's doing, people would hail it genius. I don't know. Yoko on stage is going mental at one point, and I'm like, this isn't good music. I can't remember what she keeps saying. There's one point in the song she just keeps saying, I think she's saying, I am Yoko, I am Yoko, I am Yoko. And that's the song, and she's losing it. And you can see John Lennon back there just watching her in awe, just going, she's a genius. She's fantastic. And she's like rolling around on the ground, yelling, I am Yoko, I am Yoko. It's good stuff. It's entertaining viewing for sure. I don't see what John saw, and I can imagine that for the rest of the Beatles, maybe this is their frustration. They're like, dude, we had it. We had it all. We had it all, my guy. I don't think Yoko deserves the hate that she gets. I think she fell in love with a guy, and he happened to be the lead singer of the biggest band in the world. And then that lead singer decided that he didn't want to be in that band anymore. I don't know how much she talked him out of it. From 100 minutes in this film, it didn't seem like she was restrictive of John, but I think she introduced him to, political activism. And I know that, I suppose John was always political, but she shifted his priorities, and they wanted to do all of this other stuff together. And music with the Beatles didn't interest him anymore. I don't think that's Yoko's fault. She was already interested in that, and John fell in love with it. John probably would have fallen in love with something else and fallen out of love with the Beatles. I've got nothing against Yoko. She's fine. I don't think she's a natural born musician or singer, but she is what she is. John was quite paranoid, and maybe after it all ended up, for good reason, that his phones were tapped and, people were following him. Because of that fear, he recorded all of the phone conversations that he had in his house. That gives us an interesting insight into John. I imagine if there are some absolute Beatles freaks out there who have seen every bit of John Lennon footage on the internet or in existence, then this is some new stuff for you there. There's a benefit concert that he's trying to do with Yoko, where they go town to town and free the people. So what they'll do is, John had huge empathy for the prisoners, kind of like Johnny Cash, for the downtrodden and the people who were stuck in jail and being put away for, smoking a joint, being put away for 10 years. His idea was to go town to town, and all of the money that he would make from the show, he would give to a bail bondsman who would go and pay the bail of all the people who were stuck in prison for, petty crimes or small things. So he's like a regular modern day Robin Hood. Conversations where he's conceptualizing the ideas of those and running those by his manager, and his manager's going, oh yeah, maybe, like, that's all, we should know that stuff. That's parts of history that, this is great that that's out there. It's leave no stone unturned. It's another stone of history that we've turned over and seen the moss on the underbelly of. I like that he was even too much for Bob Dylan. John and Yoko are trying to get Bob Dylan on this Free the People tour. John's trying to convince Bob to do it with him, but even Bob is like, man, you guys are just a bit much for me. I'm afraid I'll get popped if I'm hanging out with you guys. You're too dangerous. You speak too much. You're too outspoken. And that's coming from Bob Dylan, which is hilarious. As history shows, look what happens. Old Bob's still with us, and JL not so much. So yeah, it was okay. There were some interesting parts of it, Grant. I thought it was fine. You probably remember more of it from your day. Maybe you're a more slim, dusty operator. But yeah, Grant, I thought this one was okay. 1-to-1, John and Yoko. I'm not going to encourage you to race out and see it. If you love the Beatles, then I guess it's essential viewing. If you don't, it's still a cool insight into Yoko Ono and John Lennon and their relationship together. Hell hath no fury like a woman politically active, as the old adage goes. Love you lots, Gran. I'm still waiting for you to get a word in. Maybe next week you can tell me what you thought of the Beatles. Gran, I'm thinking a 6.1-to-1 John and Yoko out of 10. And then Gran said,